Hello there and welcome back to the Squirrel Heed YouTube channel, and today what I'm going to try and do is I am going to wrap up the weekend's football, the very first weekend of Premier League football, and we're going to kick it straight off with Manchester United versus Leicester. So Manchester United kicked us off in the Premier League for this year, and it was against Leicester. They won 2-1 with goals from Paul Pogba from a penalty and Luke Shaw scoring as well, which was a pretty decent goal as well. Jamie Vardy scored for Leicester, but it wasn't enough to really trigger a comeback for Leicester. There just was too much quality in the Manchester United team, but to be fair, Leicester kind of had Man United pegged back for quite a while in this game. Watching this game just felt a little bit like if this was maybe a season or two ago, or if they still had Mahrez with them, they might have actually been able to bring this one back to 2-2 with how late on they got their goal through Jamie Vardy. But Man United managed to hold out, and it's an important victory for Manchester United moving forward. They're obviously wanting to solidify themselves into the top four. What Leicester are aiming to do this season, I am not entirely sure, but it's a big win. Big, unexpected win, I would say. I think a lot of people were predicting a draw, some were predicting a loss, but they've come out with the victory. Leicester really do have to pick themselves up after this one, because I do think that they were unfortunate to concede the goals that they did, but even so, they've both got to move on to whoever they face next. Next up, we've got Newcastle at home to Tottenham, and that game finished 2-1 to Tottenham, and basically all of the goals came in 20 minutes in the first half. It was a brilliant start to the game, but it did kind of peter out, and again, you know, Newcastle were able to put pressure on. They were able to put pressure on Tottenham. They did manage to get, you know, they were hitting the bar. Rondon comes on late on, hits the bar. Goals came from Jan Vertonghen for Tottenham and Dele Alli. And then Joselu scores for Newcastle. But to be honest, again, a little bit like Manchester United, I felt that Tottenham were quite lucky in this one for Newcastle not to come back into this game. If Newcastle just had that little bit more quality in their game, they could have come out with this one. Again, they could have come out with a draw. But Tottenham got the victory, which is important for them. It is important for Tottenham to start this season well. What with having made absolutely no signings this season, they're going to have to really use all of the players that they've got, and they're going to lose Heung-min Son, or Son, however you say his name. Some people say it differently, because he's going to, I think he's going to represent his country or something like that. I'm not entirely sure what's happening there, but he's going to be gone for the rest of August. That's a long time. He's a very talented player, big player for Spurs, and they're going to miss him. I saw enough positives from Newcastle point of view to think that, alright, they might not be high and dry this season, but they have to make sure that they reach those levels of performances against the teams that are around them, which they don't always do. They will sometimes step up against the bigger teams like a Tottenham and such like that, but the teams around them, if they don't, you know, are they going to start Rondon? Because that was a bit of a surprise. You bring someone in like Rondon, you start him, surely, but they didn't. Maybe that is something that has to change from Rafa Benitez's point of view. But a good result for Tottenham, and it'll put them in good stead for whoever they face next. Next up, we've got Bournemouth versus Cardiff. And I think I did predict a win for Bournemouth, but I'm not entirely sure. I thought it would be a little bit tighter than it actually seemed to be. I can't remember who the goals came from. I'm going to have a look at that just now. So, the goals did come from Ryan Fraser got the first one for Bournemouth, and then it was Callum Wilson as well. So two of the regulars for Bournemouth that have been there for quite a while now, and they scored the goals in what would be looking like quite a routine win for Bournemouth. And this is probably where the worrying signs would start for Cardiff, is that I don't believe, from what I saw, and to be fair, some of these games I've only seen highlights of because we don't get the screening over here in the UK. When it hits 3 PM in the UK, we don't get media coverage, so it makes it really difficult to actually watch some of the matches. So some of these were just from highlights, I have to admit that. But it didn't look like Cardiff really presented much of a threat. And that is kind of what I was alluding to when I did my prediction video for the, you know, with the bottom three. Bournemouth actually looked better than I thought they did, and maybe it's, you know, I've got my prediction wrong for them being in my bottom three for this season, but it's a good start for Bournemouth, but it does show some really worrying signs for Cardiff moving forward. In what I would consider a little bit of a shock result, Crystal Palace beat Fulham, and maybe I was disrespectful to Crystal Palace. I'll admit that, maybe I was, because I thought that Fulham had the more talented players in their team, and they would be able to get a victory over Crystal Palace. But Palace, they won 2-0. And again, it was one of those things. It looked, you know, Fulham had some good chances early on, but couldn't capitalise on them. And when they couldn't capitalise on them, Crystal Palace came into, they scored a goal that was on, against the run of play. I think it was Schlupp that scored the first goal, and then late on it was Wilfried Zaha scored, and it was a really nice goal actually under the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper kind of rushed out a little bit, maybe didn't need to, but I thought that for the amount of spending that Fulham had done, I thought Fulham would actually be more prepared for this type of game against Crystal Palace. But credit to Palace, they kept a clean sheet, they scored 2 goals, and they played very well. Next up, we've got Huddersfield versus Chelsea, and that one finished 3-0 to Chelsea. Now, a lot of people are already saying, whether it's rival fans like Arsenal fans and such like that, or any other fans, maybe even Huddersfield fans as well, is that Chelsea win 3-0, and yeah, it's against Huddersfield. But to be honest, that's really the perfect start that Sarri would have been looking for. Getting a goal from N'Golo Kante, who I thought, wow, I've not seen Kante play in that type of position before. I think a little bit further forward than he has been playing in other systems like he did at Leicester and like he did at Chelsea. But getting him forward, he's got some rapid feet with him, he's got some good pace as well, and he's a very good player. Gets the first goal. Then it's Jorginho gets the penalty, debut guy for the new guy, gets a penalty, and then Pedro later on gets the 3-0. And it was honestly, from what I saw of the extended highlights, it was a very, very commanding performance. And people might just say it was only against Huddersfield. They've got to try and do that against, the Man Cities, the Liverpools and such like that as well. But it's a good start for them. It really is. It's a good start for their debut players. I think Jorginho and Kepa, can't remember how you say his name, the new goalkeeper for them. It's a good start for the team overall to get a clean sheet, score 3 goals. It might settle some of the nerves of some of the Chelsea fans as well. Look, it's a good result for Chelsea, and it puts them in good stead for next week as well, when I think that they face Arsenal. That's going to be good because they're going to be wanting to put them to the sword. Next up, we've got Roberto Pereira versus Brighton. Sorry, it's Watford versus Brighton. But seriously, like, he scored one of the goals that could be considered to be one of the goals of the season. And this tends to happen in the very first games of the Premier League season. The very first few games of the Premier League season, there tends to be a screamer in there. And this one had it. This one really did have it. Watford surprised me, and I think I'd said in my preview or something like that about them having a bit of an aged squad. Maybe would they be able to compete? I'm not entirely sure. They've shown that I was talking complete crap, basically, and they, while they've got to go on and do this for the rest of the season, what they've done today, or what they did on Saturday, I should say, what they've shown is that, yeah, they can still put teams away. They can still get clean sheets. We're seeing a lot of 2-0s here. I think we've got 3 2-0s here on the first Saturday of the Premier League. Brilliant stuff. Clean sheets are going to be key this year, as they always are for everybody. But you know what I mean. And especially for these teams, with the teams that they're playing that are going to be around them, like Watford versus Brighton, they're going to be around each other this season. And it's good for whoever picks up the victory over the other. This time it's Watford. Who knows what could happen next time, but it's a positive one for Watford, but there's definitely some things to build on for Brighton. On to the final game of Saturday, and it was Wolves versus Everton, which finished 2-2. Wolves picking up the only points of the newly promoted sides in the Premier League this season on this weekend. They picked up a point against Everton. Everton had Jagielka sent off, and rightfully so as well. But Richarlison, actually, he really did put in a good performance. He had some cool finishes for him. He really did have some really nice finishes. And it actually looked like that they would actually be able to maybe run away with it. Once it got to 2-1, you kind of wondered they're going to hold it out. When the equalising goal from Ruben Neves was a very, very good goal. At 21 years old, that man is just a stack of talent. And I think he could go far. He really could go far. And if he keeps up these performances for Wolves in this season, then I think Wolves could actually struggle to keep hold of him. But Richarlison obviously got his goals. It's 2-1. Late on, Raul Jimenez gets a nice header, and it was a nice header from a nice cross as well, and it finished 2-2. On the run of play, it would probably be a little bit fairer to say that Everton maybe deserved the victory, but being down to 10 men, I think with some of the threats that Wolves did give to Everton, they were maybe actually lucky to walk out of there with a draw as well, and that Wolves didn't win. So it actually really, it probably could have gone either way. So 2-2 is probably the fairer result. Next up, we're going to talk about a game that I actually haven't really watched the highlights of, because there aren't really any highlights, which is Southampton versus Burnley, and I think it is the only 0-0 of the weekend. Probably a positive result for both teams. Southampton probably wanting to consolidate a little bit. They're probably glad not to concede any goals. Burnley, again, they will be glad not to concede any goals as well. But you just feel that maybe if one of them could have even got like a 1-0, it could have set them on their way for the season. But it's a 0-0. It's not really a positive, it's not really a negative for either team in my opinion. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about Liverpool versus West Ham, which finished 4-0 to Liverpool, my team Liverpool. And it was a really, really good measured performance. But I say measured not because we were holding back or anything like that. We actually played ferociously in attack. We played very, very well. But it wasn't just a performance that hinged on the front three. Like a lot of our performances last season did hinge on our front three creating. This actually encompassed the whole team, in my opinion, right from, Trent Alexander-Arnold to, Andy Robertson, to the centre-backs, goalkeeper, everything like that. And a nice stat for the goalkeeper as well is that he completed 27 of his 29 passes, which is better than some midfielders. Anyway, we had a really good performance. Obviously, people were really raving about Naby Keita. Even opposition, West Ham fans were saying about how good Naby Keita actually is. But for me, and I did pick Naby Keita as my man of the match, but Milner was absolutely phenomenal. Milner is the man that age will not catch. He was just brilliant. He really was absolutely brilliant. And we've managed to show that our options as well. We have a lot of options, okay? So we look at the goal scorers first of all. Got Mohamed Salah picking up where he left off from the last season. Scored 29 goals in his last 29 appearances in the Premier League. What a stat. Sadio Mane getting 2 goals. I know that one of those goals was offside. I do. I totally know that. Not going to hide from that one. It was offside. Then the 4th goal. He gets subbed on. Daniel Sturridge. 24 seconds it took for him to score a goal. That was ridiculous. We were getting ready to take a corner. Daniel Sturridge comes in, goes back post, gets glanced. The ball glances off, I think, a defender's head. Daniel Sturridge back post, left foot sits right in, and the wobbly arm dance came back. And it was fantastic to see. It really, really was. But we also had that depth in midfield as well. We were able to, I can't remember who we took off in midfield, actually. Did we take Milner off or Wijnaldum? I actually can't remember who we took off. Might have been Wijnaldum, but Henderson came on. And then we had Shaqiri come on as well. We're showing our depth that we now have. We might not have the squad depth that Man City have, but we're getting there. And it was really, really good to get a performance like that on the first day of the weekend. The first day of the season, I should say. I remember last season 3-3 against Watford, and it was difficult to be positive about that one. This one is exactly the perfect way that you want to start the Premier League season. If you can start any way, it's getting a clean sheet with your brand new goalkeeper, scoring goals, which we did. We scored 4 goals, and we weren't greatly threatened, to be honest. And I'm not disrespecting West Ham at all there. They've made some very, very good acquisitions this summer, but they've still got to get used to this style of play. People say that we've made acquisitions as well, but it's a little bit. We haven't, gone hammer and tong and brought in like 8 or 9 players, and they've all got to gel in with each other. They had 5 new starters in that West Ham lineup when they started against us yesterday. That's difficult to do, even with pre-seasons as well. What happens in a Premier League season, and I'd say this about Arsenal as well when it comes to this game after this one, is when you've got brand new signings and you've had good pre-season, when you're put under pressure in an actual competitive match, a lot of players tend to just go back to basics and reset to what they used to do, because they're not, maybe everything that they've been taught in pre-season, it's not second nature yet. And that is something that they've got to get used to. And that high line, in my opinion, really killed it for them. The high line that they were playing on that 18-yard box, you can't do that against our forwards. You just can't. I'm obviously really happy with that result, and it puts us in a good way ahead of Crystal Palace next week. And finally, we come to Arsenal versus the champions Manchester City, and Manchester City won 2-0. And it was a convincing victory for Manchester City, who, as many pundits and media people are saying, didn't even really have to get out of second gear. And I would agree. I'm not saying that Arsenal didn't threaten at all. But again, I think it's sort of Arsenal are in that transition at the moment where they're sort of, you know, they've got the brand new manager. They're sort of stuck between the two styles that they've used to play. I think you had Socrates and Guendouzi were the new signings that they had in the starting lineup. I can't remember if they had any others to start with. I know that they brought Lichtsteiner on later in the game to play at left back, I believe it was, for Maitland-Niles. Petr Cech in goal. Had some hairy moments that I know if it was Karius, he'd be getting absolutely slaughtered left, right and centre, but we're not going to go into that. Other than that, I thought he actually had a pretty alright game, to be honest. I thought he made some decent saves. Just the whole playing out from the back, for playing out from the back's sake, doesn't really work. If you're being pressed by a team like Man City, who are some of the best, you know, pressing team, that's one of the best pressing teams in the world, full stop. And obviously Emery is wanting to make Arsenal more of a pressing team, and that's absolutely fine. Don't do it against the champions. Don't do it against the most dominant team in England right now. You know, they proved it last year. They're the first team ever to hit 100 points. It's ridiculous. You can't come out and do that, and you've got to also adapt that style of play as well. But I thought that also maybe Arsenal didn't set up very well. I thought that, you know, I think I've seen a few of their pre-season games this year when I was just wanting to watch some football, and they've been playing Lacazette out on the left-hand side, and they've been playing Aubameyang out on the left-hand side and Lacazette up front. That seemed to work for them, and then you have Mkhitaryan out on the right-hand side. Today, they wanted to go with Mesut Ozil out on the left-hand side, Aubameyang up front, Lacazette was on the bench, and Mkhitaryan on the right-hand side. And that really limited the threat that they were going to make. If they were going to make any threat, it had to be through the middle using Aubameyang, and they couldn't do that very, very well. So they've got things to work on, definitely. They've got a tough task to go up against Chelsea next week, but it's a brilliant start for the champions, Manchester City. They could not have asked for a better start when they still had starting players that were on the bench. De Bruyne, Leroy Sané, David Silva, company. Oh my god, that's squad depth. And that is it. That is all of the games for this weekend, and I'm going to try and do these types of videos after every weekend. Please do appreciate sometimes I won't be able to do them just because of either circumstances, you know, or, you know, work is being a pain in the ass and I just can't do it. It's just one of those things. But I will try and get these videos done. But let me know if you've got any suggestions for anything you'd like me to include. I will always try and take your suggestions on board. And let's just have a conversation in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and hit that notification bell. You'll get notified of all the videos that I make. Thank you once again, and I'll catch you later.